How's everybody doing? We want to welcome you to the Riddle Report. Hopefully, you're having a great day. If not, you got time to make it great. I'm your host, Ronnie Mack, and I am here with one of our, I want to say, extremely prominent, extremely successful, definitely a great archetype of a student leader, Faith Lee.
Thank you.
Feel free to add applause in the background. But we are happy to be here on the Riddle Report, where we are understanding our community, understanding the stories that make Embry-Riddle Embry-Riddle. So I'm gonna read our intro
Mhm.
because it's the part they pay me for, and then we'll jump into questions. Okay.
All right.
All right. Welcome to the Riddle Report podcast, where we explore the dynamic journeys of exceptional individuals in aviation, space, and engineering. Faith is a multi-talented aerospace engineer who holds leadership roles on campus and in industry. Her internships, her experiences range from the orientation team, Delta, campus tour guide, to an internship with Airbus. So you stay in the air a lot.
Yes.
Uh, Faith, Faith Lee is a shining star on our campus and truly embodies the word student leader. I'm your host, Ronnie Mack, and today we're honored to welcome Faith Lee, and we're going to dive into her story. All
Well,
right.
thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
Cool. How you feeling?
I'm doing good. It's Friday. Nice day.
Oh yeah. And you fresh off the internship with Airbus. That was this
Yeah,
summer, right?
I finished, let's see, it's September 12th. I finished about a month ago. Yeah.
Oh wow.
Yeah. So we just jumped right into orientation, right into school.
Yeah, you don't
Yeah.
stop. Yeah,
Yeah.
we gotta get
Have
you a
hit the ground
sabbatical.
running. Need a Fitbit.
Hey, there you go. All right, so we're gonna talk about that, but I'm gonna
Mhm.
just jump into some basic
Okay.
questions. What's the Faith Lee story? You talked a little bit before we got on camera about where you're from originally, but
Yeah.
just tell us. You ain't got to start the nursery, but
Yeah.
just give us a little bit of your background and how'd you got to here, San
Yeah,
Pedro.
so pretty much, so I'm from Houston, Texas, and growing up in Houston, Texas, surprisingly, not surprisingly, actually, you're really surrounded by the space industry and the airline industry, especially with NASA being right around the corner. And that has always stuck with me since I was little. Funnily enough, I wanted to be an astronaut. I
Oh,
really wanted to be an astronaut. I was like the local space kid, especially back at home.
okay.
Was always involved in space camp. I went to space camp for 3 years. That was my dream essentially.
Mhm.
And what happened is that, my logic was at the time, okay, in order to fly a rocket, I have to fly a plane. So and there's more ways to be an astronaut, but that was my very novice way of thinking.
Okay.
So I wanted to figure out how to get a degree and fly at the same time. And I went through a program with the Organization of Black Aerospace Professionals, and the
Okay.
person ahead of that was a pilot at United. And he was like, "Hey, why don't you think about going to Embry-Riddle?" And I was like, "What is an Embry-Riddle?" I only heard of Emory. So I was like, "What is an Embry-Riddle?" So I looked into it, and it became one of my very favorite schools to attend, if not my dream school. And I applied, got in, and I actually applied to aeronautical science.
Gotcha.
And I got to campus and I was like, I do not want to fly a plane anymore. Surprisingly enough, it was like a shocker to me because my mom had told the entire family that my daughter's gonna be a pilot. And I was like, Mom, I don't think I want to fly anymore. I think I want to go into engineering. She was like, Are we at the right school? I was like, Yeah, I'm just hopping colleges.
Okay.
So I switched to aerospace engineering, and aerospace engineering is actually where I should have been from the start.
Mm,
Back in high school, I took an architecture class and where I learned how to do computer aided design and everything like that, and that really stuck with me.
mhm,
So coming into a campus where that is pretty much the main focus, engineering, in addition to aviation,
mhm.
I felt like I was at the right place.
Okay. So our students are going to know what AE is, no
Yeah.
problem. But for maybe a parent, a cousin, or a
Mhm.
relative, like what is aerospace engineering? How does it differ from other forms of engineering?
Yes. So I get this question all the time. Matter of fact, I was shopping yesterday and someone came up to me and asked, "What is aerospace engineering?" after I told them that was my major. And I was like, "Oh, that's a good question."
Mm,
I just like to define it as the engineering principles of how an aircraft or a spacecraft operates.
mhm.
You take classes such as stability and control, incompressible aerodynamics, compressible aerodynamics, which is just in a very easy way to put it is density constant? Is density not constant? You're going to take experimental aerodynamics classes. You're going to take materials. So looking at what materials are commonly used in aerospace engineering.
Mhm.
But it differs pretty much widely in terms of other engineering principles. You're going to work a lot with fluids, especially because you're going to be in the air, and things like that. So it's a very especially when it comes to this campus, it's interesting to figure or to understand that aerospace engineering is pretty niche.
Gotcha.
When you go to a school like this, when about a fourth of the school is doing aerospace engineering alone, you don't think of it as it being so niche. But when you get out into the industry, aerospace engineering is a very small field compared to automotive or chemical
Mhm.
or things like that.
How do you feel like it helped you stand out when you're engaging industry professionals?
Yeah, so when it comes to I'll start off, like, whenever I apply to places, like, I typically apply to airlines and stuff like that because I love a good airline. Um,
Flight benefits.
yeah, I love a good airline. We'll get into that later and how that works. But, when it comes to standing out, put it from the Embry-Riddle perspective, like, when they know Embry-Riddle, they know the curriculum that we put our students through, so they know how rigorous it is, and they know the students that we produce when it comes to, our graduations, um, and everything in that realm. But when it comes to standing out just as a person, um, how it differs from mechanical, for instance, because mechanical is our next largest engineering major.
Mhm.
There's a little bit of versatility, if you will, when it comes to aerospace engineering because we both take the same types of classes,
Gotcha.
but we're almost like two sides of the same coin when it comes to aerospace and mechanical. That's always the comparison that I make when I'm talking to parents and families.
Mhm.
Um, but aerospace engineering, it's just a little bit more niche in that realm, and it kinda makes you think about how things work on a different level because 'cause you're not just working on things on the ground, but how we get them off the ground as well.
Okay. Now, to tie into that as
Mhm,
well, you've had great experiences in the classroom.
mhm.
What does involvement look like for you outside the classroom, and how has that helped you develop?
Yeah, so it's funny because as although I'm an engineering student, my involvement out of the classroom is probably the least technical things you could ever come
Okay.
across. I haven't joined any technical clubs here on campus, more so because it's just not been my interest. My interest has been talking to people
Mm,
and making sure I can make them more comfortable on campus. That's why I've joined orientation team. That's why I had been a tour guide for 4 years. Um, but that's pretty much where my interest and my expertise lies.
mhm.
Um, it's funny because when I used to work for Delta, and we'll get into that in a second, everyone confused me for being a flight attendant because of my personality.
Gotcha.
And I was like, "No, I'm an engineering student. Like I work on technical operations. It's a different
Gotcha,
thing."
gotcha.
And it's funny because a lot of people, if they don't already know me, they don't assume my major is aerospace engineering because of what I'm involved in. I'm involved in student marketing. I'm involved in orientation team. I've been a tour guide, so a lot of that doesn't even have to do with technical experience, it just has to do with who you are as a person.
Gotcha. When you're on tours, what's a common question you get all the time?
Whew, let's see. Um, More so when I used to give tours, my biggest question my one of the questions I used to get was what type of computer you should get.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
that's number
easy.
1.
Yeah.
But another question is how hard are the classes and how hard is aerospace engineering? And I always try to be upfront and honest with parents and families, and I always say that engineering is gonna be hard. I won't sugarcoat it.
Mhm.
It's not my job to sugarcoat it. Like, I wanna be upfront and honest about my experience as much as possible. And what I typically tell parents and families is that this is probably gonna be one of the hardest things you're gonna go through, especially your undergraduate career.
Sure.
But you're doing aerospace engineering. Like, I have to give myself some credit sometimes and say, like, this is a very hard degree.
Mhm.
This is not supposed to be easy.
Gotcha.
Um, but that's the typically what I say. I was like, this is probably gonna be one of the hardest things you're gonna go through. You're and what I typically tell parents and families is you have to give yourself some time to learn. Because I often forget to do that for myself too. I immediately feel like or make a comparison myself to other students in classes and say like, "Oh, this student next to me gets it a lot easier than I do."
Mhm.
But I'm looking at this for the first time. I'm not gonna get it immediately.
Gotcha.
So I always say to parents and families like, "Hey, make sure you give yourself time to grow into the material that you're learning and make sure that you really take time to have it seep in because it's not gonna come immediately. This is engineering we're talking about." So,
Very true. And then I think that's a good reminder of Embry-Riddle is a learning
yeah.
environment. You're not going to if you were an expert when you got here, we would have made you a faculty member. But
Mhm.
so like
Mhm.
it's going to take time to learn these skills. So that's a good reminder for some of our new students.
Mhm.
Speaking of the classroom experience,
Yes.
what are some projects that you just loved that you really enjoyed working on or that people
Mhm.
asked you about during interviews?
Yeah, so what's funny is that nowadays your interviews ask about my internship experience because
Gotcha.
I actually have one project on my resume, and my first project my first and only project that's on my resume is my launch vehicle project that I no, I switched that off my resume. It is my glider project
There you
that
go.
I did in Intro to Engineering. So Intro to Engineering course code EGR 101. Everybody has to take it on campus, regardless of if you're aerospace, mechanical, civil, what have you. It just depends on the course content. It's just pretty much an introduction to engineering overall. You're going to learn about professional development, how to write a resume, how to join clubs on campus, but you're also going to learn about the both technical and non-technical side of engineering. So one of the things that we did towards the end of the semester, my first semester on campus was called the glider project, and we pretty much had to design a glider out of balsa wood using different parameters, based off of any aircraft that we chose.
Mhm.
And I believe, if I remember correctly, I chose a fighter plane from World War II.
Oh,
That's
wow.
and I think that was because it was easier than
Oh,
like a Boeing 737. So I was like, okay, this is easy. I thought this plane looked cool, so I'm gonna do it.
okay.
Um, so I typically talk about that project specifically because it was probably one of the first projects, if not the first project that I was in a leadership position for.
Gotcha.
And that's what I typically tell students when it comes to their resume. I say, hey, put this on your resume. It's not about what's on your resume, it's about how you talk about what's on your resume. And when I had that on my resume, I talk about how this is the first time I was in a leadership position.
Mm,
And I got to guide the group through how to design their aircraft, how to use an X-Acto knife to model the aircraft and cut off the pieces of balsa wood and everything in that realm. We use this site called Area 32, which is pretty much how you design an aircraft, using the different parameters that you're given. But yeah, that's probably the main project that I've worked on that I've actually felt success come out of.
mhm. Can you talk about how you define leadership from your
Mhm.
space as a student? Because I think we've been places where people think leadership is just that title,
Yes.
but like, what has leadership looked like for you, and like, would you define it?
Yes, I think leadership, in my opinion, has to do with how you interact with others and how you make a space for others. And the reason why I say that is because I used to never think of myself as a leader. I never used to really think of myself as a follower. I used to think of myself as like that happy medium.
Gotcha.
I would be thrown into a leadership position if that happened to come across my path,
Hmm.
but I used to never seek out being in a leadership position because I was like, "Okay, it doesn't really fit my title, if you will." But I according to all the leadership positions that I have, one of the biggest feedbacks that I get from students, parents, families, what have you, all things alike, is you've helped my students have a place here on campus.
Wow.
And, um, it means a lot because I don't think twice about it sometimes because especially when I was a tour guide, I would just go do my job, give a tour, and call it a day.
Hmm.
But I've had parents and families come up to me and say, "You were the reason why I'm on campus. Like, you gave me my campus tour. You were the final decision that helped me make that decision."
Oh,
So
wow.
it's been wild to hear that because 'cause I'm like, "Really? That's amazing." I was just doing it because I was on the clock that day, but it really helps a lot in terms of how I feel like, okay, I'm making an impact on people, and then that's the thing when it comes to being a leader, it's about how you really make an impact on people, in a positive way.
Okay. And then jumping from the tour guide
Mhm.
piece, you got to talk about O team. You got to
Ooh,
talk about the O team experience. Tell them a little
yes.
about that. What can they expect when they come on campus from the orientation experience?
Mhm.
And then, do you have a favorite chant?
Oh, do I have a favorite chant? I'll start with the favorite chant first. So my favorite chant is rock, ROCK, you rock, and the reason why I like that is because we say it to everybody,
Hmm.
if they come in and give us a speech or something, like when the deans used to come in and give us a speech, after we would clap for them, we would start that chant, so it'd be really good, but being on the orientation team, so I started my first year on the orientation team back in 2022, and I remember so I started in 2020, my first fall semester was in 2020, and I remember I could have applied for orientation team for in 2021, but I missed the deadline, and that was my biggest regret because my roommates were on the orientation team. So I was like, "Okay, next year I'm gonna apply." So I applied, got in during 2022, my junior year.
Hmm.
It was a great experience, and I wanted to come back. but I wanted to come back in a leadership position. It was more so like, do I feel like I can be a leader of the orientation team, even though we're already our own individual leaders in our own right?
Hmm.
So I had a lot of people encourage me to apply for leadership.
Gotcha.
And on the leadership team, there are 2 captains and 4 specialists.
Hmm.
Captains are pretty much the logistics of everything. They pretty much oversee the process of how orientation is run, making sure our vendors are here to give students that really good first experience on campus, everything in that right. And then the specialist is kind of half captain position, half ambassador position. So you are essentially like a happy medium, if you will. You are still overseeing ambassadors on the orientation team, but you are still assisting the captains with whatever logistics that need be. So I applied to be a specialist because I was like, okay, this is going to give me that little bit of a happy medium. I want to still be an ambassador and
Hmm.
help out students, but I also want to help with the logistics of things. So I became a specialist my second year in the orientation team, probably one of my favorite years because I really got to watch new ambassadors grow from being a freshman on campus to their own orientation ambassador in their own way. And it was really nice to see. Um, didn't come back the next year because I was at my co-op with Delta, and then this past year, my last year in orientation team, since I'm a senior, it was really cool. I was glad to come back. I knew, that I was gonna come back. I actually flew back from Atlanta at Delta, to do my interview for orientation. So
Oh wow,
I
that's
left work to come do my
dedication.
interview. So I was like, "Okay, I've gotta make sure that I come back and interview for orientation too, because I wanna make sure I'm on it for my final year."
That's amazing.
Yes.
So speaking of the Delta experience, you got to walk us through the internships.
Yeah.
Every student is looking to get one. How did you get yours?
Mhm.
What did you learn from them? Just advice for them on the internship process.
Yeah, so I'll start with how I got them first. So my first internship was actually at a company called Spear Aerosystems. They are not the airline, contrary to popular belief. They are a first tier manufacturer for Boeing and Airbus. They were actually Boeing up until 2005, when they split off into Spirit Aerosystems. Think they're becoming Boeing again. But the Spirit Air Systems is where I interned back in 2022.
Mhm.
How I got that offer was through the Society of Women Engineers National Conference.
Oh wow.
I had no intentions of going up until 3 weeks before the conference was held, back in September of 2021.
Hmm.
That was my sophomore year, and what I like about the conferences is that there's rapid recruiting. So you walk up to them day one, talk to them, and you can get an interview either that day or the next day. So I had an interview the next day for Spirit Aerosystems, and that's how I got my offer.
Oh wow.
I was a structural design engineering intern working on electric vertical takeoff and landing vehicles, eVTOL. It was a passenger drone. That's what I like to call it. But that was my first experience in the engineering scene, if you will, in a technical sense. Um, I went to the SWE conference the following year, and that's where I got my offer from Delta Airlines.
They be
I
sending out offers at these conferences. Like,
Yeah, that's what I said. Look, that's why I go, because you breathe in the direction you want to offer. But no, it's really interesting. I actually went to this conference specifically just to network. And the reason being is because I actually had no intentions of going towards getting an offer.
oh wow.
I walked up to Delta because I was hungry and they had Biscoff cookies at their booth. And I was like, "Oh, I gotta go up to them. They've got food, and there's no food at this conference right now, but I gotta get something." So I walked up to them, and I was like, "May I have a cookie?" And they said, "You have to talk to us first." So I said, "Okay." Um, they sat me down with a recruiter, and they were like, "Okay, we think you'd be good for an interview. Are you available in an hour?" And I said, "I guess I am now." So I sat down with my interviewer, and what happened is, how I got the offer is I sent a thank you message to my interviewer on LinkedIn. And I said, "Thank you for the interview. I really appreciate your time. Best of luck with the rest of your interviewers." And she had messaged back saying, "Hey, we have one more spot left. It's yours if you want it." And I said, "You said it, not me. I'll gladly take the spot." So, when it comes to that, that was a co-op. So,
That's good.
internships and co-ops, and I'll talk about Airbus briefly in a second, but I wanna make the comparison between internships and co-ops because a lot of people, get kinda confused
Mhm.
because those words intertwine just a little bit. So an internship is typically during a summer, semester, from May to August, June to August, what have you. A co-op is typically multiple semesters. So my internships at Airbus were always during the summer. My internship with Spirit was during the summer. My co-op with Delta was the summer of 2023, the spring of 2024, and the fall of 2024. So it was 3 rotations to back, or back off and on. So I would go to school, then go back to Delta for a semester, then go back to school for a semester. Then I would do that 3 times.
Mhm.
When it comes to doing a co-op, you really have to think about how this is gonna quote unquote affect your graduation plan. Because I know a lot of students, they don't want to do co-ops per se because they say they want to graduate on time.
Mhm.
And there's nothing wrong with that. I would love to graduate in 4 years, but I'm graduating in 6 because I took a co-op. And that's totally okay. One thing I talked to my parents about is the need to do a co-op, and they were like, "Hey, are you gonna want to take this time off of school?" And I said, "I think this would be beneficial for me and my career, at the end of the day, because this is gonna really make an impact on how I apply for jobs in the future and how I make myself more marketable in the engineering scene, more or less the industry I want to go into." So I took that co-op, and it was probably the best decision I could have made. It has made me more marketable when applying to other jobs because I have worked with one of the largest airlines in the world,
Mhm.
Delta of all people, and I was there for a year and a half.
Mhm.
So it was really interesting because now I'm labeled as a super senior, but I'd rather be labeled as a super senior with a job than anything else. And my
That's
biggest
true.
advice to when it comes to applying to internships is don't just apply and reach out. I never understood the power of LinkedIn of all sites until I actually started using it for what it's worth. Um, what happens is that, and how I got my offer from Airbus is that I had actually reached out to someone on LinkedIn, because they had come to visit our campus back in January of 2022. And I remember them, and they were at the same location as my first internship at Spirit, and I was like, "Hey, I'm at Spirit right now. Is there any way I can take a tour of Airbus?" And they're like, "Yeah, we'll set you up with someone." And they set me up with someone. I took a tour of the site, and they had printed my resume off of my LinkedIn profile.
Oh,
And they were like, "Yeah, we'd love to have you back if you're interested." So that tour actually turned out to be an interview, and I didn't even know it until I saw my resume in their hand. I had never given them anything but my name and my phone number. But they took all that information off of LinkedIn, and that was when I realized, like, "Oh, this site is actually a lot more powerful than I thought it was." So my advice is to, when you apply for things, reach out to recruiters, reach out to other engineers, reach out to other professionals in your desired field and say, "Hey, I'm such and such, and I'm interested in interning here. Can you tell me a little bit more about your position? Or can I meet with you one-on-one?" That is typically how I've gotten offers so far. Just making those connections, because that makes a world of a difference, because it shows that you're passionate and you're interested in whatever they have to do with that company that you're vying for.
it's just amazing because it just shows how you were so strategic in having different experiences that built your skills to where you are now.
Mhm.
Like you said, like yes, you're in AE courses.
Mhm.
You could have did like a technical organization, but you did all these social connecting,
Mhm.
communication developing organizations that use that skill to get these
Mhm.
network opportunities. So I want the crowd to know there is opportunities throughout our campus
Yep.
and the power of networking. And
Mhm.
if correct me if I'm wrong, not just networking but building relationship.
Yes.
All right, it's the difference between handing somebody a card versus following up and building a relationship.
Yep.
Okay. Wow, that's amazing.
Mhm.
All right, I'm gonna go a little further. You got all these internships, you got
Yep.
these co-ops, you
Mhm.
got a whole lot of offers.
Yes.
Almost like Oprah, look under your seat, there's an offer. Um, is there a dream job? Is that astronaut dream still in? Oh, it's gone. All right.
I'm
What's
not
the
going to space.
what's
No,
the
I'm not
what's
going
the
to
what's
space.
the
I'm
what's
staying
the
on the
new
ground.
dream?
Yeah, so I get this question all the time, especially from parents and families on tours, because they hear the extensive list of all the offers I've had, and they're like, "What do you wanna do?"
Yeah.
And I'm like, "That's a good question." But I've realized that I wanna go into public service in some sort of realm, if you will, whether it be working for an airline or working for the public or the private sector, if you will, the public sector, either or. But when it comes to what I want to do, I just want to work at a place where I can really coordinate with people. I have realized that I can't be behind a desk for my entire life
Yeah.
because of my personality. But when it comes to working for an airline, for instance, that's pretty much been my top place of work so far, working for an airline.
Mhm.
What I like about working for an airline is the pacing. Nothing stops when it comes to the flights that we deal with every single day. And I learned that from being at Delta. There is so much that goes on to make sure that you get from, or they get people from point A to point B. When I was at Delta, I was a liaison engineer, and that's pretty much writing repairs from maintenance to complete.
Mhm.
And, even as a co-op, I had to produce repairs within 2 hours because they would call us and say, "Hey, we've got people sitting on the tarmac waiting to take off, but there's a lightning strike damage. We have to get this done. Apply
Mhm.
speed tape." And I had to write the repair for that speed tape to be applied, and that plane would go off and go to whatever its destination may be. And that's what I liked. I liked the pacing of it, but I also liked how you are helping make an impact on travel.
Mhm.
'Cause travel is such a big thing, and we're always trying to make travel more efficient, trying to make it more eco-friendly. There's so many things developing within the travel industry and the airline industry right now. Um, but on a completely, totally different note, um, I've also had a really big passion for, working in urban design and stuff like that on the side of it. I never really talk about this because I'm more so in the aviation industry.
Mhm.
But this past couple, I think, 2 weeks ago during Labor Day weekend, I actually took a tour of the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey after reaching out to someone on LinkedIn.
Hey.
They helped me get a tour of the World Trade Center complex, and I've had a passion for the World Trade Center, all of the buildings within that complex since I was about in 4th grade. I just happened to fall into aerospace engineering because I had 2 different loves, if you will.
Yeah.
Um, so I got coordinated with that, organization, that agency rather,
Mhm.
and they gave me an entire tour of the complex and how they are learning, or how they are working to make it more accessible for the people of New York. Also, the Port Authority owns all the airports in New York, so Teterboro, JFK, LaGuardia, Newark, all those airports, and one more I can't remember. But they are working to make sure that those airports are designed for the efficiency of travel.
Mhm.
And, that is typically where my interests have been lying. Um, I'm going through my classes right now trying to figure out what I wanna do. And it's funny because aerospace engineering has so many different avenues that you can go towards. There's structures, there's aerodynamics, there's controls,
Mhm.
and I like aerospace engineering from a holistic perspective. There's only so much that I wanna learn, but I was telling, one of my friends the other day, I was like, "I'm probably gonna walk across the stage with an aerospace engineering degree, and I may not go into engineering. I may go into operations of something, but it doesn't mean I still don't love it. I love aerospace engineering. It's a
Yeah.
very cool thing to do and learn, and I'm in class, and I'm like, "I'm never gonna look at the plane the same way again." So, it's really interesting to see where my interests lie and where it'll take me. Right now, I'm going through the motions of seeing where life is gonna take me, but right now, I feel like I'm gonna end up in one of those 2 places.
That's amazing.
Yep.
Alright, and as a consumer, I have to apologize because I sometimes you get those delays at the airport, and you're like, "What's going
Yeah.
on?" But y'all are
Yeah, we're
doing
trying to work it
y'all
should
doing
work
real
it
work.
now. Yes,
So I
that's why
apologize to anybody in aviation. Um, so bringing it back to campus,
Yes.
what is your favorite Riddle moment? You done knocked everything off the bingo card. Like,
Yeah.
what has been your favorite Riddle moment?
Orientation week. Yeah, orientation week. And this is not me even bluffing for the sake of this podcast. I love orientation week. It is, and there's a reason why I keep coming back to the orientation team. And it's because you really get to see how excited people are for campus. And there's one thing that I have to realize is that we're an international campus, if you will. We've got
Very
people
true.
coming from all over. I'm from Texas, so I drove 16 hours to get here from the central US. So it's different when it comes to people who have come from across the world,
Mhm.
just to come to Embry-Riddle. And I like to see how passionate people are about, especially during orientation week, because there are so many events that happen, and you really get to see how passionate new students are about their major.
Mhm.
Um, What's also interesting is I like to see my favorite middle moment is when I also see people change their major, and the reason why I say this is because one thing was on a panel a couple of weeks ago during orientation week, and one of the questions was, "What is one thing that you wish you could have told your parents?" And one thing I said is that interests change, and I like to see when people's interests change, because it helps them because I can see that they're more comfortable in a new spot. My interest change of all things. I was switched from being a pilot. I don't fly anymore, but
Mhm.
I used to wanna fly for, like, my entire life. But I switched into engineering, and that's where I fell in love with or what I fell in love with. And I like to see when people find their niche and their home in their major, especially when it comes to the smaller majors, because that's where you really get to find that community on campus.
Yeah. I think a lot of kids just breathe a sigh of relief on that one
Yeah,
because they think, "I came here as one major I had to
and you have
finish."
to stay locked in.
Yeah, but like
Yes.
you said, your interest may change.
Mhm.
As we get toward the end,
Mhm.
what is some advice for students, just in general, how they could be successful at Embry-Riddle? What does that look like?
Yes, my and I have to remind myself of this too. Don't compare yourself. And the reason why I say that is because and I mentioned this on another panel that I was on. Um, you are going to come across people with a plethora of experience. I'm one of those people who have a lot of experience, and I don't realize it sometimes
Mhm.
until someone tells me. It just goes to the back of my brain. But what I always tell new students is don't compare yourself to the person sitting next to you because comparison is a thief of joy.
Yes.
Um, and you want to make sure that you realize that your path is your path. After I took that co-op with Delta, I used to compare myself consistently because the people that I came in with in 2020, they graduated in 2024. It's 2025. We're pushing 2026 in a couple months. And
Gotcha.
I
Yeah.
graduated at the end of 2026. And I used to compare myself and say, I'm graduating late. I'm graduating behind. And there's nothing of that sort. You are just on your own path.
True.
And you have to realize that because your path is your path and you are what you make of it. And there are some times where I'm in class and like I said earlier, like I'm thinking, "Oh my gosh, this kid next to me
Mhm.
is Einstein Jr. He understands stability and control.
Mhm.
I don't understand the look of what we're doing. There are no numbers on this board. It's just Greek letters."
Mhm.
But it's okay. Like you have to give yourself time to grow into your experience. And that is going to be the one thing that's going to help you be successful, making sure that you realize that what you're doing is for you and you only.
Mhm.
Um, and it's all what you make of it at the end of the day.
You might be a motivational speaker. I already got the title
So
from from cookies to co-ops.
yes.
We'll get to that. We'll work on it after the
Of
episode.
course, yeah.
So a couple final questions.
Yes.
What is your go-to Chick-fil-A order?
Now when the line is along, let's see. Um, we're talking about breakfast or lunch. Let's
Oh,
see.
that's true. You're the first person to ask either one.
Yeah.
That's up to you.
I'll do breakfast
There
because
you go.
I'm a breakfast Chick-fil-A person. Chicken minis, hash browns, and apple juice.
Mm,
Yes.
breakfast of champions. All
Yes.
right.
Specifically at 7 AM. Yes.
Why so early?
Because the line isn't long. I can get in and get out.
That's a good point.
Yes.
That's a good point. Any final words? This has been a fun conversation.
It
And
really has been.
yeah, yeah.
I guess my final piece of advice or thoughts, words, comments, concerns is to really, wherever you're going to school, to really make sure that you make the most out of your time there. I have been learning to do that day in and day out, specifically because I only applied to 2 schools, and
Mm,
I've met parents and families who have applied to tens of schools, and I'm like, "I only applied to Embry-Riddle and Tuskegee University.
mm,
Those are the only 2 schools I applied to." And it's all about what you think you're gonna gain out of your time at that campus, and I've gained a lot of my time here at Embry-Riddle. I'm still here. So, it's I even while I'm going through my senior year, um, it's when classes are getting harder, it's really making an impact on me and how I go through the motions and everything in that realm. But my advice to students, my final advice to students, and this is gonna be sound so cliche, especially for students going through orientation week or students planning to come to Embry-Riddle for orientation week, get involved. You are not gonna you're gonna hear it many different times, but
mm.
Getting involved is the one way that I have thrived on my time here on campus. It's where I've made friends, it's where I've met faculty members, it's where I've really realized, okay, this is the point of having a community here on campus, whether it be from the Society of Women Engineers to the National Society of Black Engineers to the International Society of Air Safety Investigators, which is another club I'm a part of.
Oh, nice.
Long title. But yeah, like getting involved in those clubs and organizations or just having a job here on campus, that is how you really make the most of your time here because it's really how you make connections with other people. And we talked about networking and the importance of networking and making those connections and relationships. That is really going to make or break your time at times. It's really going to help you thrive here on a campus, whether it be Embry-Riddle or elsewhere. But specifically Embry-Riddle, like you need to take advantage of the offices and the resources that we have here on campus because there's a plethora of things that we have offered to you as a student, whether it be industry, faculty, what have you.
Okay. This has been fun.
It's been really fun.
This has been really good. So I'm gonna do my closing statement,
Yes.
and we can still chat when this is over. But faithfully, it's been a true pleasure. It's been an
Thank
honor hearing your
you.
insights, your reflections. Um, I know for sure you've been a great impact on our
Mhm,
campus, on our students, on parents and families too.
mhm.
I know you put a lot of them at ease as they brought their pride and joy to our
Of
campus. So
course.
I know they're extremely excited for that. And thank you for sharing your story on the Riddle
Mhm.
Report. For our listeners, check us out on our website. Check us out on wherever you get your podcasts for more interviews, more opportunities to connect with fellow egos. And I want to say until next time, one story, one community, one ERAU. And I would like to say, UROCK, you
You
rock.
rock.
Have a good one.
Bye.